John Marshall was born September 24, 1755 to Thomas Marshall and Mary Randolph Keith. As a child, he was mostly homeschooled by his father, but spent a year at Campbell Academy with future President James Monroe as his classmate. When he was a teenager, he was inspired by George Washington to join the military. In 1780, when he was stationed at Oak Hill, he decided to leave and visit his father in Yorktown, where he met his wife, Mary Willis Ambler. 1780 is when he decided to leave the military to study law and started his own practice that year. He built his law practice by defending clients against British creditors who attempted to collect debts incurred during British colonial rule. Then he ran for city council in 1785, but came in second and was made recorder instead. Then, in 1788, he became a delegate to the state convention. Then 10 years later, in 1798, he was invited to the Supreme Court but turned down the offer, but he still helped with the XYZ affair. He soon became known for the famous slogan, "Millions for defense, but not 1 cent for tribute," talking about the French government officials. Then in 1799, he was elected seat in the House of Representatives. In 1801, he finally became a Chief Justice. During his 34 years as Chief Justice, he made over 1,000 decisions and penned more than 500 of his opinions. He served on the Supreme Court for 34 years until he died in 1835 on July 6 at the age of 79. This makes him the longest-serving Chief Justice ever.
Texas versus White involved the state of Texas, the Supreme Court, and White and Chelis. The case started in 1869, but the events involving the case had been going on for a few years. The case had originated in Texas. Texas had been issued 500 bonds, each with $1,000 on it, that could be redeemed 14 years later. The United States had been paying back some of the money during the 14-year period. The rest of the bonds that hadn't been paid back were kept stored in the Bank of Texas. Texas argued that it didn't want to be part of the United States and held a convention to vote on separating from the Union. During the secession period in Texas, a rebel government formed that seized the bonds. The bonds were given to White and Childs, who tried to sell the bonds but were denied by the United States government. The rebel government wanted to use the money on funding their military to provide weapons and ammunition. Texas wanted to reclaim the bonds from whites and had to go to court and try and fight for the bonds. Texas went to court to deal with the bonds, but also had to deal with the issue of secession. The United States argued under the 14th Amendment that Texas could not secede from the Union. The Supreme Court ruled 5-3 that the bonds could be given back to Texas, but Texas could not secede from the Union.